Welcome to the Scaling Up Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Edelman, and here with Danny Gavin, who is a digital marketing expert. Welcome, Danny.
Hey, Eric. So nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. Okay, so tell me a little bit about you and your firm, what you do, and what kind of clients you service.
Sure. So I started digital marketing at a very young age. My parents launched their first e-commerce website in the late 90s, and I built my school's website, I think in 8th grade or something crazy like that. After yeshiva and rabbinical training, I decided to go get my MBA. In 2010, I started consulting after I graduated, flipped it into an agency in 2017, and we've grown from about 2 to 3 people to almost 30.
Wow.
In addition, I was invited back by the university to teach. So over 10 years now, I've been an adjunct professor at the University of Houston, teaching master's level digital marketing courses. And most recently, about 4 or 5 years ago, during COVID, realized I could take that education and turn it into my own sort of online school offering, getting people who are in jobs that they don't really like and moving them into the world of digital marketing.
Okay. All right. That's awesome. So you're doing it, you're teaching it, you're preaching it, like you're digital marketing all around.
Totally.
So the goal here is to help entrepreneurs scale. So if somebody doesn't really understand digital marketing, and they don't know what to do next, and there's so many things they can do social, they can do search, they can do paid or unpaid search. They're all different channels and they're not sure where to start. And every consultant tells them, well, if you just work with me for $3,000 a month, it's going to be great. And it's going to take you 9 months till you really see the results. But it's going to be good. Trust me. It's like, how should they decide what they can do? What are 2 or 3 things they can do to think about what the process of working with digital marketing to increase their revenue, their profitability? What should that look like? What should they do?
Cool. So the first step is making what you have to offer, right? Make sure that you know who your audience is and what are the advantages of your product or service. Because in the end of the day, you could throw dollars or any marketing at something, but if you don't actually have an offering, if you have something that works, that people want, then that's not going to help. So I know that's not marketing. That's more like the pre-marketing, but it's really important.
Have a real business first before you tell people about it.
Oh yeah, because we've had things that we've marketed, let's say on Facebook before, where it's like, oh yeah, we'll sell it, and man, it's just, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Second thing would be, often there's this battle: do I go organic or do I go paid? Right? And that could be whether it's in search engine marketing, meaning like doing SEO versus doing Google ads, or on the organic side of even social media. Do I have a social media presence or do I unlock social media advertising?
Right.
I like to say that you have to approach this really on what is your necessity right now. There are a lot of business owners where they need leads and sales right now. And there are a lot that okay, we don't really need it right now, but we need to scale. We're willing to invest for a longer term strategy. And it's important to know the difference, because organic does take time. Paid is something which, I'm not saying it happens instantaneous, but the results happen more quick, right? It's a lot quicker.
And it's also easier to measure.
Yes. I mean, so on the organic side,
you can measure engagement, I guess, on the organic side, usually.
So we have to divide between search engine and social, right? So on social, you're right. From an organic perspective, a lot of it is keeping that brand engagement, but there's the 20-80 rule. 20% can be throwing that link to your product, but 80% really has to be just engagement. And that is going to be harder to measure. That sort of engagement and positive noise that's going around, how much is that actually going to affect sales? That's difficult to measure. I would say on the organic side of search, that's a little bit, that's more clear cut of okay, if I'm growing traffic, how much of this traffic is actually turning into leads and sales? So there's a little bit of difference on those two, but you are right. Typically on the paid side, it's easier to measure the direct ROI. On organic, typically it's going to be a little bit harder.
Right. Okay. And in terms of what types of businesses are best catered to be advertising online? I mean, is it every business should be online and everybody should have an online marketing strategy? Are there some where you feel like it's these are the best opportunities and these are the ones that you personally know how to help the most?
I mean, I personally feel like every business these days should have an online presence. Now, which online areas should they be focused on? That will be dependent on who your market is, right? But there's no reason that I think everyone should be. Now, look, I think in certain communities, like the Orthodox community, you can do a lot with traditional media and still grow your business. So there are, I say there are exclusions to everything, but in general, I think you should have an online business. But be realistic, right? Like if if what you sell people aren't actually searching for, so then spending time on Google and trying to rank, but if there's not that search volume, you're not looking for it, why even be there, right?
Right.
So there is some nuance to it.
Okay, cool. Give me like more of a personal example of, like a business that you felt that you were able to help, that like your standard run of the mill digital marketing not expert wouldn't have been able to. Like, what's a big win for you as an agency?
Sure. So I'm trying to think of a specific example. So I would say, it's funny because this is like the hot kind of business in Lakewood, but right at I would say at the top of my head would be ABA. So ABA therapy.
Right.
So we've worked with a couple. I'm not saying that's all we work with, but we have. And I think the idea is that when we're talking about lead generation, so in marketing, we have two sides basically. There's e-commerce, right? So sales, and then lead generation, which could be for an organization. So it could be for nonprofits, it could be software, but in general, it's the concept is that when a person signs up on your website, it doesn't mean they're actually paying. It's just that there's that opportunity. So what's the difference between digital marketing versus, let's say, digital marketing expert is when you get that lead, we ideally need to track where that came from, even which campaign, and then also see on the other end, did that lead actually turn into a sale? And the difference here is that if you aren't looking at what happens past that lead, is it a high quality lead or low quality lead? Did it turn into an actual client or not? Then, then when you're looking at your data, you might say, I'm going to focus on this campaign because it's driving a lot of leads and the cost is so little. But that campaign over there, it's not as many leads and the cost is really high. But if I know at the end of the day that the one that's generating less leads and costs more money, but if that's the one that's actually bringing me patients or clients or whatever it is, then okay, I'm going to invest more in that one. So a lot of people, and I'm not saying every agency or consultant is like this, but you'd be surprised when they're reporting to you, they're reporting, okay, how many leads we got, how many clicks there were, what were the impressions, right? And like very vanity metrics. So setting up a system that you can actually see what's going on is a huge reason for the success. So in a way, it's not even the digital marketing, it's what's happening afterwards and how you
Right.
combine that together in a system. So in a system like that, where like, let's say patients, it could even be with lawyers. We've got some really big lawyer clients, but because we're able to close that gap, we know that you could spend $100,000 a month on Google Ads, but because one of them gets me $2 million case, right? It was all worth it.
Sure. Yeah, and lawyers are a great case study because like the numbers are so high, the value of the customer acquisition is so high. I had a situation like that where I started working with a new client. And they had paid search campaigns set up. They were spending a decent amount of money, and they thought everything was going great because their consultant guy told them everything. Look, here's the numbers pulled right from Google Ads dashboard. And they weren't really measuring conversions. Like what they were considering a conversion was really somebody coming to the website. It wasn't somebody actually buying something. And they really didn't have a way to tell, well, how much of this they were sending lots of traffic to the site. That was definitely true. But how much of the traffic was worthwhile, how much of it was actually resulting in revenue, that was really opaque. And since they hadn't really done any homework to trust, they were just trusting somebody without really understanding it. It wasn't somebody who was educating them also on how it was working. I don't think they were really getting much for their money. And
right, because if you're just sending traffic, technically anyone could go onto Google Ads and send traffic, right?
Right. Yeah, that's like the first step, and
it's the baseline.
It may be great, but it's not necessarily great, and it definitely is costing you money.
Yes.
Okay, tell me a little bit about your team. I know it's not just you. You have a pretty big operation. How do you divide up the work, and how have you scaled your own business past yourself?
Great question. So my team is Yeah, so like I said, we started 2 to 3, and then we scaled to about 30. We have 3 departments, which may change in the future, but for different service lines, we have separate departments. Each has a department head, and then people who work in those departments. Um, and then we also do have an account management team because we want our service line people actually working on the work to focus on the work. And then those relationships, we want to have the account managers who manage those day to day, but we also make sure there's not a bottleneck, because sometimes when you're just speaking to account manager, it's like, okay, but they don't really get it. So we do have these cool Google groups where everyone's kind of CC'd. The account manager is just that quarterback who takes things. Yeah, and so we have a mixture between full-time as well as contractors, and that kind of rounds things up, and that helps with scaling, right? Sometimes you have a lot of work, sometimes you don't, and that helps as well. I would say the main key to what changed around and allowed me to scale over the past couple of years is during COVID, I went into I forgot what the name of the social network is right now. But it was the ones where you went on and you chatted and you spoke, and it was just audio only. And someone came into the room, right, the virtual room, and said, "Hey, I'm a fractional COO for digital marketing agencies." I was like, "What? There's something called a fractional COO for digital marketing agencies?" And the thing was, I was working late, late into the night every night till 3, till 4 in the morning, and it was just getting overwhelming. I was like, "Okay, let's talk to this person." And so so having someone who could come in and help open my eyes to getting myself into a situation where I could scale and where I could grow was a huge life-changing moment, really. So, Danny was someone who didn't delegate, but then now he can delegate, and it's really hard, right? It's a big change. Danny was someone who had to hold all of his cards to his chest, but now he can actually have a leadership team of people in his office who really care and know what's going on, and we can work together to grow, right? So those are just examples of getting the help outside of myself in order to create the systems and processes, the ideology, the thought, in order to get past that. And thank God, change is hard, but I was able to adopt that because I really believe that by going down that, even though it hurt and it was difficult, but I was able to get to a new point.
Yeah, you can obviously accomplish so much more with a team working in lockstep with you than you can on your own, but it's easier said than done.
Oh, totally. I remember, like, this is a 3-year process, right? So we're not saying it happened in one day.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. Danny, if people want to get in touch with you, if they're interested in speaking to you about your services, marketing, how you can help them, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so my agency is optige.com, OPTIDGE. I'm very involved on LinkedIn, so check me out, Danny Gavin. Also check out my podcast, which is the Digital Marketing Mentor. We look at the intersection between mentorship and marketing, and we have a episode that comes out every 2 weeks, so check that out as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate your time. And check out Danny if you're looking to take your digital marketing to the next level.